Preaching is always such a great transaction. I get the chance to talk to you. You get the chance to listen to me. And you are such great active listeners in that way that I'm always confident you're tracking with me well. And so when I say, do you remember 4 weeks ago when we started the book of Daniel, you're all going to say, yeah, okay, well, good. And I started the book of Daniel not by turning to the book of Daniel, but by turning to the book of Psalms. And so we're about a third of the way through our series. I thought it'd be good just to review that because not only the whole theme of the book of Daniel, but the theme of Daniel 4, which is where I'll invite you to turn, and we'll be there in just a moment. But the theme of Daniel chapter 4 is found in Psalm 115. Let me just read this for you. Not to us, O Lord, not to us, but to your name give glory, for the sake of your steadfast love and your faithfulness. Why should the nations say, where is their God? Our God is in the heavens. He does all that He pleases. The theme of the book of Daniel, really the theme of the entire Scriptures, and for sure when we focus closely on Daniel chapter 4, like we're going to this morning, the theme is this: God rules our world as He sees fit. It is not about what I want to get out of the world. It is not about what is the best political party that's going to help the world the most. Those are all important considerations. But at the end of the day, God rules the world as He sees fit. And in Daniel chapter 4, and I'll invite you to turn there, Daniel chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar, tremendous king of Babylon, is going to learn that lesson very directly. Now, Nebuchadnezzar had been a very busy man. By age 29, although he was the son of the king, and that helps with your career path, he was already a general. He'd already won a battle and conquered the most prolific power of the ancient world, Egypt. He had on his return captured a young man and several others named Daniel and the other Jewish folk and had taken them back to his homeland on his way back to be inaugurated as king, because in September of that year, September of his 30th year, his father had died. After the appropriate 30-day time of mourning, then he was inaugurated as a 30-year-old king of, at that point, one of the greatest extensive kingdoms the ancient world had ever seen. Upon his rise to the throne, he wasn't content with what he'd achieved. He added further territory both to the east and to the west of his current holdings for the kingdom of Babylon. He became a military expert. He became a general. He became a king. He conquered not only Egypt, but also on the north, on the east, and the west, other nations. He also built the capital, Babylon, to be one of the great cities of the ancient world, one of the 7 wonders, the ancient hanging gardens of Babylon. That was his not only design, but that was his execution as well. The Ishtar Great, the great blue enameled gate on the entrance off the river into Babylon, his idea, his creation. He was a busy man who also happened to find time, about 30 years into his 42-year reign, to be the only pagan in all of history to contribute a chapter to the Bible. Daniel chapter 4 is the only chapter in the Bible written by an unbeliever. It is written by Nebuchadnezzar. Look at Daniel chapter 4, verse 1. King Nebuchadnezzar. So this is a letter. Daniel chapter 4 forms a letter from Nebuchadnezzar. It's a circular letter to the kingdom that he ruled. This was after God had stepped in very decisively and did something to change his life. King Nebuchadnezzar, to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell on earth, peace be multiplied to you. It has seemed good to me to show you the signs and wonders that the Most High God has done for me. Look at verse 3. It's written almost as poetry because Nebuchadnezzar, this pagan king, learned something in a really pressure cooker time in his life, learned something about God and His character. How great are His signs, how mighty His wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and His dominion endures from generation to generation. In essence, God rules the world as He sees fit. You and I need to recognize that truth. We need to come to terms with the fact that life doesn't always turn out the way we would like it to, and when it doesn't, that's on purpose. There is a purpose to which God is working toward in those circumstances. When we have success, when we're sort of middling around through life, and even at times when there is great loss, turmoil, hurt, or confusion. And so if you're thinking, if you're tracking, you're saying, well then, Scott, what is that purpose? If it's as He sees fit, what is the end to which He sees fit to drive history? And I think there are at least 4 answers to that. God works for His glory. Clearly, that's the point of Daniel, the entire book, and certainly Daniel chapter 4. God works for His glory. In any given circumstance, whether I enjoy success or whether I'm just sort of getting along, what God is interested in that moment is His glory. Secondly, God works for the salvation of the lost. It's interesting that much of Daniel unfolds as the sovereign God trying to open the eyes of kings who have all kinds of idols they're worshiping, and our God saying, trust me for your salvation. God is working for the salvation of the lost. Third, God works for the good of His people. This is a fundamental truth that people of faith have to be able to grip in order to have encouragement in hard times. God is working to my good. God is not working to harm me. He's working for my good. Although, at times, in the shortened view that you and I have, it may feel like it's harm. Ultimately, God is working for His glory and for our good, which is the fourth thing that God does. He drives history ultimately toward the ultimate goal that is His greatest glory and our greatest good. Daniel chapter 4, it's illustrated. Look at verse 4. Nebuchadnezzar is going to retell a story, a very dramatic thing that happened in his life, and it was God working for God's own glory and for the good of Nebuchadnezzar. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at ease in my house and prospering in my palace. Stop for a minute. The season of Nebuchadnezzar's life, and while we don't know because there's not a time stamp here, we think it was about his 30th year. It was well into his reign. He has enjoyed, he says, at ease in his home, meaning things at home were good, right? Parents, take that whenever we get it, right? We'll take it. Things were good. It was smooth sailing at home. And at my palace, prosperity, meaning the company was thriving. Wars had been won, tax money had been gathered. It was a very good time in Nebuchadnezzar's both personal and professional career when this took place. I saw a dream, verse 5. I saw a dream that made me afraid. As I lay in my bed, the fancies and the visions of my head alarmed me. Nightmares had begun to creep into this peaceful life that Nebuchadnezzar had ordered for himself. So I made a decree. This guy's always making decrees, isn't he? I made a decree. All the wise men of Babylon should be brought before me, that they might make known to me the interpretation of the dream. Hey, what does it mean? Life's great. Why am I in turmoil then? What are these nightmares, these fear for my security? What is that about? But they could not, the end of verse 7, make known to me the interpretation. At last, Daniel, now we don't know if he was just waited in line to be the last called since he was the superior, or if he wasn't a part of this to begin with, but somehow it works its way up the food chain to Daniel, who's the chief of the interpreters. At last, Daniel came before me, he who was named Belteshazzar, after the name of my God. Isn't that interesting? Nebuchadnezzar had given Daniel this name. It means Bel is my protector. Bel meaning the name of his God. Belteshazzar, after the name of my God, and in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And I told him the dream, saying, O Belteshazzar, chief of the musicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and that no mystery is too difficult for you, tell me the visions of my dream that I saw and their interpretation. Daniel, I know your reputation. You're good at what you do. God speaks through you. Help me understand what this is all about. Verse 10, the visions of my head as I lay in my bed were these. I saw and behold a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew and became strong, and its top reached to the heaven. And it was visible to the end of the whole earth. Its leaves were beautiful, and its fruit abundant. and in it was food for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it, and the birds of the heavens lived in its branches, and all flesh was fed from it. I saw in the visions of my head as I lay in my bed, and behold, a watcher, a holy one. This, by the way, is the only time this word is used. It's a Babylonian word for an angel. I heard and I saw, and an angel came down, or a watcher came down from heaven. Verse 14, he proclaimed aloud and said thus, chop down the tree and lop off its branches, strip off its leaf and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts flee from under it and the birds from its branches, but leave the stump of its roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze amid the tender grass of the field. Let him be wet with the dew of heaven. Let his portion be with the beasts in the grass of the earth. Let his mind be changed from a man's, and let a beast's mind be given to him. And let 7 seasons, some sort of manner of time, let 7 times pass over him. We think it's years. Now, verse 17. The sentence is by the decree, Nebuchadnezzar, you who decreed that Daniel be given this name, you who decreed that the idol be built on the temple and or on the plain and all should bow down, you who decreed that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter, you who decreed that, you who decreed the interpretation be given to you, there is a God in heaven who's overruled you. Here's the decree. The decision by the word of the holy ones. Look at verse 17. The living to the end that the living may know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will, and sets over it the lowliest of men. Now, verse 18, he's wrapping it up. This dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, saw, and you, O Belteshazzar, tell me the interpretation, because all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make it known to me, the interpretation. But you are able, for the 3rd time you'll say this, for the spirit of the holy gods is in you. What does it mean? What does it mean? I saw the tree, it's growing, it's thriving, and it tumbled down when someone cut it off. What's it mean? He sort of has the sense of impending doom, and he's on the right track, by the way. What does it mean? Why would God, who rules everything as he sees fit, why would God give a dream to a man who is very successful? I think there's a lesson there for us, and it's the first application point this morning. It's this: beware the seduction that comes with success. Now listen, let's be careful here, all right? I didn't say beware of success, okay? I hope that's what you're aiming for in life. It's certainly what I'm aiming for in life. In fact, you recognize that God promised us success, right? Those who ordered their lives according to the Scriptures, the principles of life God has laid out, He promises prosperity and success. That doesn't necessarily mean a full bank account. It means by the way God measures success, we will measure up to that. We'll have prosperity and success. It will be shalom. It will be well with us. But there is a subtle danger, a seduction that comes with success. And it's this. It's the idea, the concern of pride. Nebuchadnezzar, who had enjoyed for perhaps as much as 3 decades of professional life, nothing but success after success after success, goals checked off of his list, the finances managed and accumulated. He's now at the place to enjoy some of that. And into that moment, God speaks a word of warning. And the word of warning is to beware the seduction that comes with success. Some of you, some of us have enjoyed a measure of success. And as we find out that God rules the world according to He sees fit, that success has come largely as a result of our effort, but also as a result of God's blessing. So there's a danger for us. The danger is, do not allow pride to begin to grip our hearts. Do not allow our thinking to be corrupted by success so that we begin to become arrogant. And again, we'll ask the question, how do I know, Scott, how do I know if I'm falling prey to pride? Let me give you some markers of that. Some signs that pride is creeping into my thinking. These are certainly an evidence in Nebuchadnezzar's life and career. We'll see that both this week and next. Signs that pride is creeping into my thinking. One, boastful. People that are losing the battle with pride are boastful people. They say things like this: look at what I've done. We'll see it next week. Nebuchadnezzar will say, look at this great Babylon that I have built for my glory. And people that are losing the battle with pride often find I, me, and my cropping up in their conversation a lot. There's a lot of focus on what I have done. Look at me. There's boastfulness. Secondly, there's bullying. Get out of my way. I'm going to do this. And you're not going to stop me from that. And Nebuchadnezzar for sure had that attitude, and that's a subtle sign of danger. When people become a means to an end rather than the end, beware. We begin to see people as tools we can use to accomplish what I want, what we want, and there's a sense of pride that can creep in. Proud people are also isolated. Proud people are isolated. None of his men would tell him what to do. It was Daniel who alone stepped up and spoke the truth. Proud people say, you can't tell me what to do. Proud people, when they're told the truth or someone maybe gets in their face a little bit, proud people are angry about that. They have found that they can intimidate their way through, and that if I just say it loud enough, whether it's right or wrong, people will believe me. And beware of pride creeping into our thinking. Proud people are entitled. I deserve this. I've worked hard for this. I want this, and I can get this. Maybe or maybe not. Let's evaluate. Let's watch closely. Are these signs that are beginning to creep up in my thinking? Are these words beginning to come out of my mouth that would demonstrate that I have thought a little too much about what I have accomplished and not enough about how God has blessed me to this point? Nebuchadnezzar was there. Now, the story I'm about to tell you really doesn't necessarily indicate pride, because I don't think this person wrestles with pride, but it does, I think, illustrate how we get to that point in life. I was talking to a staff member a few months ago, and he was just sort of unloading on me, and I've got this going on, and I've got that going on, and this person kind of disappointed me, and I'm not going to get to that, and my to-do list is long, and you know, right? I mean, we do that on Tuesdays here on staff, because Monday's a day off, and Tuesdays when we come in and complain about, the fact that we have a wonderful job. And I wasn't buying that day, you know what I'm saying? But you do this too, right? You unload. And so I stopped him. I said, hey, listen for a minute. It's like, yeah. No, I mean, like, put the pen down. Look up at me. I want to see your eyes right now. And that's usually a signal when I say that. They're like, oh, okay, well, he's going to deliver something here. And I delivered a gem. I said, you're not that important. See how great it is to work here? No, wait. And I said, you know what? Neither am I. I'm not that important either. Okay, I'm just not that important, and neither are you. And neither was Nebuchadnezzar, who was absolutely convinced there was no way this kingdom was going to go on without him fully in charge of this thing. And God sent a warning shot across the bow saying, Nebuchadnezzar, I'll do as I see fit. If I want to remove you from the kingdom, I'll do it, and I'll help the kingdom to thrive while you're gone. If I want you to stay active, you can stay active in the kingdom. Be so careful, child of God, when you think that you are so important, when I think I am so important, that there's just no way this is going to happen without me. And so now one of the sayings around our office you'll hear from time to time is, hey, remember, you're not that important. And it's a good piece of advice to keep in mind. Beware the seduction. Beware the danger that comes along with success. Hey, drive for success. Totally for that. I am for success. Let me just say that. And can I get an amen on that? I am for success. But I am for success where God is honored because I'm driving towards the ends that He has called me to. Okay, let's do that. And let's avoid the pride that is willing to step over people to get what we think we deserve. All right. Okay, but I'm going to go on to point 2 anyway. All right? That's like so good. There's just so much to say there. Verse 19. Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was dismayed for a while. His thoughts alarmed him. Daniel intuitively got, I think God had revealed to him what the meaning of this dream was. And he was sort of like, whoa, I'm going to have to deliver something to you you're not going to like, and you're the king. And so he got quiet. And Nebuchadnezzar read that, and the king answered and said, Belteshazzar, let not the dream or the interpretation alarm you. Now, what happens next as Daniel delivers this truth is a terrific example of how to deliver truth in a difficult circumstance. Belteshazzar answered and said, I'm at the end of verse 19, my Lord, may the dream be for those who hate you, and its interpretation for its enemies. That's a great lead-in if you've got to deliver bad news, right? Verse 20. The tree you saw, which grew and became strong, so that its top reached to heaven and was visible to the end of the earth, whose leaves were beautiful and its fruit abundant, and in which was food for all, under which beasts of the field found shade, and in whose branches the birds of the heavens lived. It is you, O king, who have grown and become strong. Your greatness reaches to heaven, your dominion to the end of the earth. I think we have a picture of one of these giant trees. Can we put that there? But that's 1,000 years old at least, 400 feet tall. By the way, the little trees around it are a 10-story building tall. They're 100 feet tall. Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, and in his dream he saw himself, I'm the biggest tree in the forest. That's what he thought. He was totally convinced of it. And so as the dream is going on, he's like, yep, like this dream so far. But it gets worse. Look at verse 23. And because the king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, chop down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump. So we have a picture of, it's not this tree, but this is back years ago. That's dramatic. By the way, what knuckleheads think about cutting down 1,000-year-old tree? What were they thinking? But this is how Nebuchadnezzar saw his future. That's a different view. Daniel has to deliver this. So look at verse 24. Daniel 4, verse 24. Daniel's now moving in to deliver some difficult truth, but truth from God. This is the interpretation, O king. It is a decree. I love that. God's said something. He's made a decision. It is a decree of the Most High, which has come upon my Lord the King. You are subject to God, who will rule His world as He sees fit, no matter how tall you think you are. You shall be driven from among men. Your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. You shall be made to eat grass like an ox. You shall be wet with the dew of heaven. And 7 periods of time shall pass over you until you know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom He will. This, and we'll look at this unfolding of this next week. This is called lycanthropy or boanthropy. It's where we get the legend of the werewolf from. There are some mental illnesses where people think of themselves, they fancy themselves some kind of an animal, and will literally live like this. And so this is the threat. This is the warning that Nebuchadnezzar gets. Look at verse 26. And as it was commanded to leave the stump of the roots of the tree, your kingdom shall be confirmed for you from the time that you know that heaven rules. In other words, king, as soon as you recognize God Most High gave you the kingdom, has the ability to take it away and to return it to you, as soon as you acknowledge that, you can have it back. It's amazing it took 7 years, right? Verse 27, Daniel makes a very courageous statement to a king. Therefore, O king, let my counsel be acceptable to you. Acceptable, the word means useful. I love that. May this word I'm about to deliver to you benefit you. Break off your sins by practicing righteousness. do you think Daniel felt when he delivered that sentence? And your iniquities by showing mercy to the oppressed. Hey, think of someone else for a change, is what he's saying. Here's the promise that there may perhaps, because God's the one who acts sovereignly, that there may perhaps be a lengthening of your prosperity. What do we learn from Daniel? See, the scene has shifted now from Nebuchadnezzar writing the story about himself to writing about what Daniel told him. So what do we learn about this from Daniel? It's this. When we have the opportunity, deliver God's truth when we're given the chance. Okay, Daniel's the hero of this part of the story. When called upon, when asked, when given an opportunity, he delivered truth. When there's conflict, when there's trouble with someone is walking in pride or arrogance, God often will give us the opportunity to deliver some truth. How can I do that effectively, as Daniel did in this setting? I think that delivering God's truth when given the chance requires that we deliver it with impact. Well, how can I do that? How do I deliver the truth with impact? One, speak within the context of a relationship. 3 times Nebuchadnezzar says, Daniel, I know you. Daniel, I know you. Daniel, I know you. Okay, leverage the relationship we have with people to speak truth into their lives. That's what it's required. Daniel didn't just storm into the throne room and say, hey, king, you're going to topple over like a tree that gets cut down. Daniel was invited in by virtue of the relationship. So maybe on your job, it's time to deliver some truth. Maybe in your marriage, maybe in our relationship with our kids, it's time to deliver some truth. Maybe that's hard truth. Remember, deliver it in the context of a relationship. Don't just drop a bomb, pull the pin, and walk off. I'm saying that because I've tried that, and it's really messy. Speak within the context of a relationship. Secondly, speak gracefully. Okay, don't barge in. Think about what you're saying. We parents, we have their hearts in our hands when we rebuke them. Yes, we have to correct them, but do it gracefully. Husbands, don't be an oaf with our wives. Speak with grace when we have to speak the truth. And we have to speak the truth. We need to provide spiritual, loving leadership and care in the home. That's going to require saying truth in the context of relationship. Be graceful about that. Third, within the context of relationship and grace, be tactful. Choose words carefully. I love how Daniel's like, oh, king. Very careful. Maybe, perhaps. Tactfulness. So there are times you need to write things out. To be careful you get it right. Fourth, speak usefully. I love that that's the way this part of the section ends, that is acceptable. Daniel says, may my words be acceptable. The word is useful to you. Okay, so after I've delivered truth, is there value in the ears of those who have heard it? That's important. If what we're saying isn't of use, what do you think the next advice I'm going to give you is? Just don't say it until it does have some use. And Daniel modeled that for us. So how to deliver truth with impact within a relationship, gracefully, tactfully, and then usefully. Look at verse 20. I want to wrap it up with this week. We'll pick up next week with the rest of what happens here. But verse 28, even though Daniel had given him a warning, all this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar. Warning ignored. We'll see that for sure, clearly next week. So I don't normally end a message on quite this somber of a note, but I think I've got to be honest with you because it's where this section of the text breaks off. You and I need to heed God's warnings or be prepared to face the consequences. I think that's the truth. God brought Daniel across Nebuchadnezzar's path, and Daniel said, King, change some things. Maybe some of you here today, maybe a message for Scott Nichols as well, is that there's some danger signs creeping into our lives. Maybe there's some boundaries God has laid out clearly. By the way, next week we'll look at how do we know if it's God bringing this judgment into my life or not. We'll clarify that. But maybe there's some boundaries, clearly marked boundaries, I've chosen to step over, and I'm in a danger zone right now. Will you please consider this morning's message as God's word to us to say, stop, back off. Don't walk in that path. Daniel warned Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar ignored that, and we'll find next week, found lengthy and painful consequences to his sin being continued. Maybe God is speaking to you in His great grace, in His great mercy, saying, listen, child of God, it's time for you to change the way you're living your life. That would be a gift from God when He warns us of that, because Proverbs 29:1 says this, and it's a warning. He who is often reproved is that word spoken to stop. He who is often reproved, yet stiffens his neck, will suddenly be broken beyond healing. That's a hard word. Hear the message God has delivered to us and ignore it at our own peril. Because our God rules the world as He sees fit, for His glory and our good. And at times, if we blow through all of the barriers and knock down all of the warning rails, at times God is going to call us up short because He loves us too much to let us get away with it. And we will find ourselves facing often painful and lengthy consequences. Well, let me pray for us. Father, that's a somber, sober note to end on, but it's where this text ends. And so we honor You by saying Your word. Lord, I'm not a judge. It's not my job. But You know the hearts and minds of people. Maybe someone's here today and they're really sensing the red warning light going off on their dashboard. God, that we would have the wisdom to pull over, stop, and change directions. God, some who are blowing past all of the speed limit signs, will you just draw them near? Father, I pray for others here who maybe do not have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Lord, that is the most dangerous warning sign. Eternity without God. Lord, I pray that they would repent of their sin, turn to Jesus Christ, who died and rose again for their sins, and believe that simple truth. Thank You for Your word, Lord, the word that encourages and the word that warns. And help us to walk in the knowledge of that this week, I pray. In Jesus' strong name, and all God's people said, amen.